love well. And by that I mean loving God deeply, loving one another passionately, and loving our neighbors boldly. And while it's still very early in our ministry year, I hope that you have been as blessed and challenged by this year's rally cry as I have been, to love well. And so as we continue on in the fall, on the very first part of loving well, which is to love God deeply, we're going to be looking at some of the attributes of God, finding out what he is really like. Because as Dan said, the heart cannot love what the head doesn't know. And so we'll be using in that 6 different Psalms in our next sermon series, which is going to be called Behold Your God, a series beginning in mid-October and will run through the end of November, leading us up to Advent. And each of those Psalms will be chosen to highlight a particular attribute of God to let us know what he is like. And for me personally, I can't think of a better way to come to know God than to step into the book of Psalms. Because first of all, the book itself is fascinating. It's a very unique part of Scripture. In the number one bestseller in all of human history, which is the Bible, the book of Psalms is the most read portion of Scripture, making it perhaps the most read book ever. It's a powerful book. It's the largest book of the Bible. It's 150 chapters long. It contains the longest and shortest chapters in the Bible, Psalm 119, Psalm 117, and it is set at the center of the Bible, is it physically at the heart of the Scriptures, which I don't think is a coincidence. It's a songbook, it's a prayer book, it's a book both on the nature of God and on the nature of humanity, and its poetic style allows us to feel more of the relationship of God, as well as to give us the practical realities of what that relationship looks like. Covers the spectrum of human emotions, covers the spectrum of what humanity struggles with, and it's brutally honest in its portrayal of the human condition and the human heart. And in it, it teaches us how, in spite of ourselves, we are invited to be drawn near to God, to approach him and begin to do life with him, to process our emotions and process our circumstances. Everything from joy to sorrow, from victory and defeat, the book of Psalms teaches us that we are to process life in a healthy way in the presence of the Lord. But what it shows mostly, I think, is the heart of a God who, even though he knows us better than we know ourselves, knows how broken and sinful we are, yet he still pursues us and he still invites us to come near to him. One thing I desire, King David says in Psalm 27, to dwell with God forever. Now, David was a man who, in a worldly sense, could have anything he wanted, but the one thing he treasured above all things was to draw near to God. That's the book of Psalms, drawing near to the one who is already near to us. And that's pretty powerful. But perhaps even more powerful than some of these general truths about the book of Psalms and what it's like is that the book of Psalms is the most quoted book by Jesus. And so the Psalms give us a glimpse into both the heart and the mind of Christ. It flowed out of him as he navigated life in a broken world, the same world that we live in. And he modeled for us what it means to walk with the Father moment by moment through this life. And perhaps even more striking than that is the Psalms is what he leaned on in the most painful hours on earth for him. Jesus breathed out the Psalms through his entire life and is what he breathed out as that life came to a very painful and brutal end. Into your hands I commit my spirit. And then Luke tells us he breathed his last. That's Psalm 31, last words that Christ spoke. So if you want to get to know Jesus more, get to know the book of Psalms. And as you do, you'll begin to think more like Christ, and you'll begin to love more like Christ. But the third thing for me personally is that this book, the book of Psalms, is the book that the Lord has been using in my life pretty powerfully over these past few years to draw me closer to him. And what I have found is that it's shaping the way I think. It's shaping my heart as it shapes my conversations with God. And it makes me more aware than ever of his presence, of his activity, and of his reality in my life and in the world around me. Through the Psalms, God has been teaching me to abide with the one who abides with me. And so to help all of us to get to know God more, what better place to go than to the book of Psalms? And it's my prayer that in our time together in that book, we will encounter God as a congregation more clearly and more powerfully so that we get to know him better. And as we do, we will come to love him more deeply, which is the first and most important step in what it means to love well. So may God bless you and greatly, greatly use this as you continue to walk with Him through this year.